Let's listen to why Jordan Peterson thinks segregation between men and women is needed.
Since the 1960s in particular, we've blown off the barriers between men and women in terms of general participation in society, right? And so we've decided that all things considered, spaces isolated to a given sex are suboptimal, right? The schools are co-ed, the public schools, the universities are co-ed, all business enterprises are co-ed, so to speak. And then, of course, so that raises the question, well, should any domains be left sex segregated?
No, we don't need segregation of the sexes. Just like how we stopped it with the examples you said, public schools, businesses, universities, and the such. We can just do that with everything else and make everything more gender neutral and more inclusive.
Um, if so, how do you walk the fine line between sex segregation for the purpose of facilitating development and sex segregation that turns into prejudice and oppression, right?
You don't. If you want to do segregation, you're gonna have to be, use bigotry and oppression in order to make this happen.
Rejection on the basis of sex. And then also the thorny question of, well, if most enterprises should be completely open to both sexes, which enterprises should be protected? Do you have any? Obviously, you believe that athletic performance, athletic competition per se, should be one of those protected categories. But do you have any sense of how?
Yeah, in sports, we have women's sports, we have men's sports, and it's pretty much gonna stay like that for a while. Um, Trans people joining sports, does not mean um men are playing in women's sports. It's women playing in those sports, men playing in those sports. So this idea of like trans people taking over and like men, quote unquote, are on like women's um, sports and dominating is just a total lie by Jordan Peterson and other right wingers.
We as a society should draw the line? It's like, are there spaces that should be male only? Like one of the things I really wonder about, for example, I talked to Tulsi Gabbard about this a while back, is like, it isn't obvious to me at all.
I mean, golf used to be male only. Uh, what? Gentlemen only. Ladies excluded. Is used to be what it's like the acronym for it, or no, gentlemen's only, ladies forbidden. Uh, and that's what people would call golf. Should we go back to where, uh, you know, we prevent any woman from playing golf ever?
That our society would benefit by having women in frontline combat.
Right.
Like, and it isn't that I can generate an immediate coherent argument for why I believe that. There's something about it that strikes me more deeply and emotionally, I suppose, that
Emotionally, I thought men weren't supposed to experience emotion. Jordan Peterson, are you telling me you're a snowflake beta cuck?
just, there's something preposterous about that. Maybe it's partly because, look, it isn't obvious to me that professional frontline combat, that's pretty damn hard on anyone. That's even really hard on extremely well put together and extraordinarily strong and brave men.
Yeah, and it's also hard on extremely well put together and fit and brave women.
And so to also presume that that's going to be open to women just seems to me to be taking the whole bloody charade too far. Now,
Charade? What charade of allowing women to be in the military. How's that a charade?
You could say, well, that I'm old-fashioned and prejudiced, although I don't actually think I'm either.
Yeah, and Nazis don't think they're racist either.
But, it is a thorny question, right? It's like, well, if men and women are equal, then why should there ever be sex segregated spaces of any sort?
If men and women are equal, that's because Jordan Peterson doesn't think men and women are equal. Jordan Peterson thinks women are property, and that if a woman is raped, it's only rape if the men that want to bang her get mad about it.
We're certainly seeing that on the bathroom front. We're seeing that on the change room front. We're seeing that on the athletic front. So what do you...
The change room front, the bathroom front, the athletic front, these aren't battles, dude. That's the thing with like right wingers. They think all these things are like them fighting against evils and stuff when it's not. And that's because of their religious delusions.
Where do you think that the line should be drawn so that there are female spaces and male spaces and that those are protected? And how do you think we manage that, like legally and conceptually?
Okay, people can create their own spaces if they want privately. There's like gyms that are women only, and that's totally fine. And they will allow trans women to join unless they're like a bigoted gym. But privately, it's all pretty okay. But if you wanna work in the public and associate in the public, segregation is illegal.
I think where any place where either of the sexes is vulnerable, whether that be in regards to privacy, in regards to safety, in regards to anything that relies on your physiology, because of course men and women are physiologically different. I think that's where that sex protection based rights are important.
Okay, what do you even mean by that?
So prisons, that's an area where women specifically are vulnerable.
Okay, then let's stop putting trans women in men's prison and trans men in women's prison and whatever. I mean, we can put them. We can put trans men in men's prison like they should be, and trans women in women's prison like they should be.
Of course, shelters, again, bathrooms, locker rooms.
Well, bathrooms can easily be made gender neutral. We don't really need, multiple bathrooms for everybody. Gender neutral single occupancy bathroom is easily okay. Same with like a family style bathroom, a slightly larger bathroom where parents would usually take their kids to go to the bathroom and stuff. That's why it's considered like a family bathroom. That can be easily implemented instead of like a gendered bathroom.
No woman should be subjected to having a male in that space. So I think it's areas where sex is important.
So it's something like there's a subset of areas where the fact of the biological difference between men and women becomes paramount.
Correct.
Right. And so those would be, well, in change rooms is a really good example of that. But you extended that also to say women's shelters and prisons and so forth. So there's something there that's sort of, what would you say? It's reminiscent of the idea of nakedness, I suppose, because you mentioned vulnerability, right? So when you're stripped down to your most vulnerable, that's when the segregation is most necessary. It's something like that, right?
Wild how he's like equating all of this to being like naked and stuff when no, it's not the same whatsoever.
Right?
I believe
it seems that way.
Yeah, I believe there's value in understanding that. I truthfully think anywhere where sex is relevant. There are certain places. Let's consider the workplace. There are certain places where sex isn't necessarily relevant. There are certain places where it are. I like how you mentioned military. That's a very good point. Men and women, there are differences there.
All throughout history, men and women have been in militaries, and women have been shown to be as capable as men. It's just these misogynistic men and women that think like, women can't be in the military because it's somehow a quote unquote man's job to, be a fighter.
That would, again, make anything that requires sheer strength make men be advantageous and make that more achievable. That's what
You would think that because women are nurturing protectors and they will, do whatever to protect their children, that they would be good at battle because they would, be willing and ready to do what is needed to protect their kids and thus their nation. But no, somehow women are supposed to be these like weak people that should only be doing, housework and protected by men.
we're wanting, right? We want to be this powerhouse. We want men at the forefront. So I think where sex plays a role, that's where we kind of have to draw that line.
Whether you're feeling stressed,
Skip this ad. If you enjoy my content, please comment, like, share, or subscribe. It helps me out a whole lot. And if you like, you can donate by checking out my links below. Thank you very much.
So it would be where the biological differences are germane, number one, to performance, like specifically germane to performance, but also number two, specifically germane to differential vulnerability. So anywhere where women are sexually vulnerable, or anywhere where the physical differences in performance actually have a substantive effect on the performance itself. So here's an example. I mean, there's no evidence that men and women differ in IQ. There are micro differences in IQ, and some of them are.
No, men and women don't differ like an extreme amount in IQ. You can find women that are, 100 times smarter than men, but just because a man is a man doesn't mean that they're smarter. How else would we have all these women scientists out there that are making all these breakthroughs even before men? There's a lot of women out there that have not been credited for their work because men took the credit, thinking that women weren't smart enough to actually be making all these breakthroughs. Okay, to be honest, I can't name many of these women that have their credit taken since I can't remember off the back, but it's easy to look up. A lot of these women have started to be given credit for their work, but the point is, men and women have equal intelligence, especially if both people are given equal access to education. Like in the past, a lot of women weren't allowed to get much education because it wasn't considered necessary for women to be educated. So yeah, it would seem like men are smarter because they had a better access to education. You can also say the same thing about like during slavery. White people were smarter than the slaves, the black people, because white people had access to education compared to black people, which was considered illegal to educate a black person and for a black person to be educated.
Arguably important in some micro domains, but overall, the evidence is quite clear that on average, men and women have the same level of intelligence. And so then we might presume that in any domain where intelligence is the fundamental marker of potential merit, there should be no sex segregation. But if we're looking at something like, let's say, military battlefield rescue, that might be a good one, where physical strength and becomes a paramount marker of the actual ability to do the job.
Yeah, and there are some women that are a lot stronger than some men out there and have an easier time with rescuing people and maybe having to carry a person or something. So we can't just dismiss people just because of their, just because of their sex or whatever. I mean, there's a ton of uh, MMA fighters that are women, a ton of wrestlers that are women, a ton of, firefighters and stuff that are women. And these people could easily take on Jordan Peterson in a fight or doing some kind of rescue mission of having to carry a person. I would love to see Jordan Peterson try to be manly and go out and save somebody in a combat mission compared to a woman.
Then sex-based discrimination starts to become appropriate and morally required. And then you could make the reverse case, which is, well, where women are particularly vulnerable on the sexual front, so that would be in locker rooms, for example, that's also a place where sex segregation is reasonable. So those are the basic rules, something like that.
Not
I mean, yeah, in some cases, maybe we need some segregated showers. In various places, there are co-ed showers and bathroom and stuff. And you know what happens there? People get along and they're fine. They don't have this like paranoia that like some trans person is gonna come and convert them to being trans.
not just is it appropriate and morally responsible, it's beneficial. It's something that is good for the greater good of society in general.
Yet you have yet to prove how segregating people based upon sex and as well as anything else, because the arguments of segregating people based on sex can be used to segregate people based upon race and anything else. You just gotta slightly modify the arguments and then claim it benefits society. And though, again, she has not shown, nor has Jordan Peterson shown, how this benefits society whatsoever.
So yeah, I agree.
Well, this is the end of the video. Again, if you like my content, please like, share, and subscribe. Drop a comment. Let me know what you think. Peace out.